politeness feels harmless. It feels mature, civilized, and controlled. But have you ever considered that sometimes politeness isn't kindness? It's fear. Fear of tension, fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood or seen as difficult. The problem isn't that you're polite. The problem is when you're polite in moments where clarity is absolutely required. Think about it. There are situations where your politeness protects the other person as comfort at the expense of your own stability. You soften your language to avoid a confrontation. You smile on the outside while internally you're tying yourself in knots. You say, "It's fine," when it is anything but fine. Over time, this becomes a dangerous pattern. You become the one who absorbs disruption, the one who constantly adjusts, the one who has to explain things twice. You give the benefit of the doubt, long after all the evidence has shifted. And because you handle it all so calmly, no one ever questions it. The famous psychologist Carl Jung talked about the persona, the socially acceptable version of ourselves we present to the world, the agreeable one, the composed one, the reasonable one. But when this persona becomes overdeveloped, our shadow self grows quietly behind it, filled with resentment, exhaustion, and unspoken anger. Politeness becomes a strategy for belonging, a way to secure approval and avoid being seen as harsh or cold. But in certain crucial moments, this kind of politeness completely erodes your boundaries. And boundaries are not aggression. They are structure. They are essential for your well-being. In this video, we're not talking about becoming rude or ruthless. We're not talking about dominating every conversation. We are going to explore 9 specific situations where excessive politeness actually weakens your position psychologically, emotionally, and in your relationships. We'll look at 9 moments where silence is stronger than a long explanation, where firmness is healthier than softness, and where direct clarity is far more respectful than just accommodating someone else's feelings. This isn't about changing your core personality. It's about losing that knee-jerk reflex to over-accommodate. Because when you stop being polite in the wrong places, something powerful shifts. People around you recalibrate. The dynamics rebalance. And you finally stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours. If you've ever felt exhausted from being the reasonable one, stay with this. By the end of this video, you'll recognize exactly where politeness has been costing you power and where restraint should replace accommodation. Politeness becomes dangerous when it overrides clarity, not because kindness is weak, but because automatic accommodation trains people to expect access without accountability. The first 3 situations where you must stop defaulting to politeness are subtle. They do not look dramatic. They look ordinary. That is why they persist. The first situation is when someone repeatedly disrespects your time. Time violations rarely arrive aggressively. They arrive disguised as small delays, last-minute changes, vague commitments, or the assumption that you will adjust. The polite response is flexibility. No problem. That's fine. I understand. You say these things because you want to be perceived as reasonable, adaptable, easy to work with. But repetition changes meaning. When someone consistently shifts plans, interrupts your schedule, or expects instant replies while offering delayed responses, politeness becomes permission. You are teaching them that your time reorganizes around theirs. Time is not just minutes. It is attention, energy, life. When you protect it selectively, you communicate value. When you protect it inconsistently, you communicate availability. Quiet power does not argue about time. It enforces it through behavior. Shorter responses, clear limits, refusal to rearrange without acknowledgement. No emotional explanation required. The second situation is when someone tests your boundaries indirectly. Boundary testing rarely sounds hostile. It sounds curious, suggestive, playful. A comment about something you said no to. A just this once request. a subtle push against the limit you already expressed. Politeness tries to soften the no. It adds apology. It adds justification. It adds reassurance. I just can't right now. I'm sorry. I'm just busy. Maybe another time? Every added word reduces the strength of the boundary. According to Carl Jung, when we over-identify with the agreeable persona, we fear conflict because it threatens belonging. So we cushion our refusals. We try to maintain warmth even while protecting space. But warmth layered over firmness creates confusion. Clarity is cleaner. A simple no, without hostility and without excess explanation, signals psychological stability. It tells the other person that your limits are not emotional reactions. They are structural decisions. If someone respects the boundary, the dynamic strengthens. If they push harder, the information becomes valuable. Politeness in this situation delays revelation. It keeps you guessing about intent. Directness exposes it. The third situation is when you are being baited emotionally. Emotional baiting is subtle provocation. A comment designed to trigger reaction. A comparison. A dismissive tone. A loaded question. The bait is rarely obvious because it relies on your sensitivity. The polite response is defense, clarification, explanation. You attempt to correct misunderstanding. You try to restore tone. You lean forward to smooth the exchange. But emotional bait feeds on engagement. When you respond defensively, you validate the tactic. You show that your equilibrium is negotiable, that your emotional state can be accessed with minimal effort. Quiet power does not engage bait. It pauses. It withholds reaction. It answers minimally, if at all. Silence in this situation is not weakness. It is refusal to participate in destabilization. Many people provoke unconsciously. They test for leverage. They look for openings. Not maliciously, but habitually. When you decline to react, the dynamic shifts. The bait loses its function. You may feel the urge to explain yourself anyway. That urge comes from discomfort with unresolved tension. But not all tension requires resolution. Some tension reveals motive. These first three situations share a pattern. They involve small moments where politeness seems harmless. But over time, these moments accumulate into imbalance. You become the flexible one, the understanding one, the responsive one, the emotionally available one. And because you handle it calmly, no one sees the cost. The cost is internal. Subtle resentment, quiet fatigue, a sense that you are slightly overextended in conversations that should feel mutual. When you begin adjusting your politeness in these areas, reactions may shift. Some people will notice immediately. Others will feel the difference without naming it. You may sense mild resistance or surprise. This is normal. You are changing the rhythm of the interaction. But remember this: reducing politeness in boundary moments is not aggression. It is precision. You are aligning behavior with value. You are removing unnecessary cushioning from decisions that were already made internally. Over time, this precision stabilizes you. You spend less energy anticipating reaction, less energy rehearsing explanations, less energy repairing tension you did not create. And something else happens. You begin to feel less emotionally reactive. Because when your time is respected, when your boundaries are clean, and when you do not engage bait, your nervous system settles. You are no longer scanning for subtle violations. You are responding to clear information. That clarity builds confidence. Not loud confidence, contained confidence. And contained confidence changes how others approach you. They become more deliberate, more respectful, more aware that access is intentional. All of this begins with 3 adjustments. Protect your time without apology. State your boundaries without cushioning. Decline emotional bait without engagement. These are not dramatic shifts. They are quiet corrections. But quiet corrections restructure dynamics in ways that politeness never could. The fourth situation where you must stop defaulting to politeness is when apologies are performative. Not every apology is repair. Some apologies are strategy. They arrive quickly, smoothly, almost rehearsed. I'm sorry if you felt that way. That wasn't my intention. You know, I didn't mean it like that. The words appear responsible, but nothing changes afterward. The polite response is acceptance. You nod. You say it's okay. You minimize the impact to keep the atmosphere calm. You move on because you do not want to seem unforgiving. But repeated behavior reveals the truth. When the same pattern continues after multiple apologies, politeness becomes permission. You are signaling that words are enough, even when actions remain unchanged. Quiet power does not argue about sincerity. It observes consistency. If behavior does not shift, access does. You do not need to accuse. You do not need to lecture. You simply reduce exposure to the pattern. Fewer opportunities. Shorter conversations. Less emotional availability. This is not punishment. It is alignment. The fifth situation is when someone benefits from your guilt. Guilt is one of the most powerful social tools. It can be triggered subtly. A disappointed tone. A reminder of what you used to do. A comparison to someone more available. A suggestion that you are changing. The polite reflex is reassurance. You explain your reasons. You justify your schedule. You overcompensate to prove that you still care. But guilt manipulation thrives on explanation. The more you defend your decisions, the more you imply that they require defense. According to Carl Jung, the shadow often contains suppressed anger and unmet needs. When we fear being perceived as selfish, we push our own needs into the background. We comply to avoid feeling like the villain in someone else's story. But protecting your time or energy is not selfish. It is structural. When guilt appears, pause before responding. Ask yourself whether the request aligns with your capacity or whether it is extracting reassurance. If it is extraction, reduce words. Replace explanation with statement. I won't be able to. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available. No additional narrative is required. The sixth situation is when you are pressured for immediate answers. Urgency creates psychological pressure. It narrows thinking. It makes you reactive. I need to know now. Just tell me. Why are you hesitating? These phrases attempt to accelerate your decision-making before reflection has occurred. The polite instinct is compliance. You respond quickly to avoid seeming difficult. You provide answers before you have processed them fully. Later, you may regret the speed of your agreement. Quiet power resists artificial urgency. It understands that immediate responses benefit the person applying pressure more than the person receiving it. You are allowed to say, I'll think about it. You are allowed to say, I need time. You are allowed to let silence sit after a question. If someone reacts negatively to your need for time, that reaction is information. It suggests they value control over clarity. Politeness in these moments sacrifices discernment. When you slow the pace, you regain it. These three situations share a common theme. They involve subtle coercion. Performative apologies attempt to close conflict without change. Guilt attempts to override autonomy through emotion. Urgency attempts to bypass reflection through pressure. In each case, politeness protects harmony on the surface while destabilizing you underneath. You may feel tension the first time you respond differently. It can feel unnatural not to reassure, not to smooth, not to accelerate. That discomfort does not mean you are wrong. It means you are exiting a familiar role. Roles become comfortable, even when they are costly. You may have been the forgiving one, the understanding one, the quick responder. These identities feel virtuous. They attract approval, but they also attract dependency. When you adjust, reactions will vary. Some people will adapt immediately. They will respect your time, accept your pauses, and align their behavior with their words. These are relationships capable of growth. Others will resist. They may interpret your steadiness as coldness, your pause as withdrawal, your reduced explanation as distance. But this interpretation is often projection. They are adjusting to the absence of leverage. Leverage disappears when you stop apologizing for boundaries. What replaces it is clarity. Clarity reduces confusion. It simplifies dynamics. It removes the subtle negotiations that once exhausted you. You will notice that your conversations become shorter, but more meaningful. Your commitments become fewer, but more intentional. Your emotional responses become measured rather than reflexive. And perhaps most importantly, your internal dialogue becomes quieter. You are no longer replaying interactions, wondering if you explained enough. You are no longer anticipating disappointment from others because you have stopped volunteering guilt. This steadiness does not isolate you. It filters. It filters out those who relied on your accommodation. It strengthens connections with those who value mutuality. Politeness, when misplaced, creates imbalance. Boundaries, when enforced calmly, create respect. The difference is subtle but powerful. In these situations, silence is not avoidance. It is authority. And authority, when contained, requires no defense. The seventh situation where politeness costs you power is when someone confuses access with entitlement. Access is a privilege. It is not an obligation. Some people become accustomed to your availability, your responsiveness, your emotional openness. Over time, what was once appreciated becomes expected. Messages are assumed to be answered immediately. Invitations are assumed to be accepted. Emotional labor is assumed to be provided. The shift from appreciation to entitlement is subtle. You notice it in tone, in shortened gratitude, in the absence of acknowledgement, in the surprise they display when you are unavailable. The polite response is to reassure them that nothing has changed, to explain your schedule, to overcompensate for your absence, to prove that you are still who they expect you to be. But entitlement grows when it is unchallenged. Quiet power does not confront entitlement loudly. It reduces access quietly. Shorter replies, delayed responses, selective engagement. No announcement is required. When access is intentional rather than automatic, dynamics recalibrate. Those who respect you will adapt. Those who relied on your constant presence will reveal their discomfort. Entitlement dissolves when it is no longer rewarded. The eighth situation is when someone repeatedly interrupts your self-respect under the guise of humor. Humor can conceal hostility, a dismissive comment framed as a joke, a subtle insult followed by laughter, a pattern of minimizing your achievements or preferences in playful language. The polite reflex is to laugh along, to avoid seeming sensitive. To prove you can take a joke, you dismiss the sting because confrontation feels excessive. But repetition changes context. If humor consistently positions you beneath someone, politeness becomes self-erasure. You do not need to escalate. You do not need to retaliate. You can simply withdraw the reward. No laughter, no participation. A neutral expression. A calm, "I don't find that funny." Silence after a joke can be more powerful than argument. According to Carl Jung, the shadow often reveals itself indirectly. Humor is one of its safest vehicles. It allows criticism to pass disguised as play. When you decline to validate it, the dynamic shifts. You communicate that your self-respect is not negotiable, even in subtle moments. The ninth and final situation is when you feel the urge to over-explain your decisions. Over-explanation is often driven by anxiety, a need to be understood, a fear of being misinterpreted. You provide context, reasoning, backstory, emotional nuance. You attempt to anticipate objections before they are voiced. But over-explanation reduces authority. It signals uncertainty. It invites negotiation. It opens space for debate about decisions that were already made internally. A simple statement holds more power than a paragraph. I won't be able to. That doesn't align with me. I've decided differently. No defensive tone. No apology layered into clarity. When you stop over-explaining, you may initially feel exposed. The silence after your statement can feel heavy. You may sense the other person waiting for more. Do not rush to fill it. Silence reinforces finality. Over time, others adjust. They stop probing for extended justification. They begin to accept your words at face value. These final 3 situations share a deeper theme. They test whether you see yourself as obligated to maintain comfort. Entitlement tests your availability. Disguised disrespect tests your self-respect. Over-explanation tests your confidence. In each case, politeness tempts you to smooth tension at your own expense. But quiet power does not smooth everything. It allows certain tensions to remain unresolved. Unresolved tension is not always dysfunction. Sometimes it is boundary reinforcement. When you stop being polite in these 9 situations, you do not become harsh. You become precise. Precision reduces emotional leakage. You are no longer drained by conversations that require performance. You are no longer mentally replaying interactions to check whether you were too firm. You are no longer negotiating internally about decisions that were clear from the beginning. Instead, you feel contained. Containment is calm. It is not rigid. It is not cold. It is simply steady. And steadiness changes perception. People begin approaching you more thoughtfully. They become clearer in their requests. They respect your pauses. They reconsider careless humor. They recognize that access is intentional. Some will drift away, not because you changed negatively, but because you stopped providing unconscious benefits. Others will remain, not because you are easier, but because you are clearer. This is the distinction. Politeness preserves surface harmony. Boundaries preserve structural integrity. When you choose integrity over approval, the dynamic may feel quieter. Fewer dramatic exchanges. Fewer emotional spikes. Fewer rushed commitments. But beneath that, quiet is strength. You are no longer adjusting to avoid discomfort. You are allowing discomfort to reveal character. And in that revelation, your position stabilizes. Not loudly, not aggressively, but unmistakably. There is a final shift that happens after you stop being polite in the wrong places. At first, the changes feel external. Shorter responses, clearer boundaries, fewer explanations. You notice differences in other people's reactions. Some grow more respectful. Some grow distant. Some test you once more before adjusting. But eventually, the shift turns inward. You no longer feel the reflex to soften everything. That reflex used to be automatic. A subtle tightening in your chest before you said no. A quick smile before delivering firm words. An immediate urge to clarify your tone so no one misunderstood your intention. Now, that reflex slows. You pause instead of smoothing. And in that pause, something important happens. You realize politeness was never just behavior. It was identity. You saw yourself as the reasonable one, the composed one, the accommodating one. You took pride in being emotionally intelligent enough to manage tension without escalating it. You believed that maintaining harmony meant maturity. But harmony maintained through self-suppression is fragile. It depends on you constantly absorbing what others avoid. When you step out of that role, you confront something deeper than social adjustment. You confront the fear that without politeness, you might be rejected. That fear is the root. According to Carl Jung, the persona develops to secure belonging. It is the mask that gains approval and safety. Over time, we begin to believe the mask is who we are. We defend it. We polish it. We fear cracking it. But growth requires integration. When you stop being excessively polite, you are not destroying your persona. You are integrating your shadow, the part of you that is firm, decisive, unwilling to be reduced. Integration feels uncomfortable at first. You may feel slightly exposed when you decline without apology. You may notice silence lingering after your statements. You may sense that others are recalibrating their expectations. Do not rush to fill that recalibration. Let it happen. Because the final transformation is not about how others treat you. It is about how you treat yourself. When you no longer override your own discomfort to protect someone else's comfort, your nervous system stabilizes. There is less internal conflict, fewer rehearsed conversations in your mind, less second guessing. You become internally congruent. Congruence is quiet. It does not need validation. It does not need to convince anyone. It simply aligns action with belief. You begin to notice subtle changes. You speak slower. You respond more selectively. You tolerate silence without anxiety. You no longer rush to reassure someone who is unsettled by your boundary. Their discomfort is no longer your emergency. This does not make you cold. It makes you responsible only for what is yours. And that responsibility is lighter than constant accommodation. Some relationships may soften. Some may fade. Some may strengthen in ways you did not expect. When dynamics are no longer fueled by your overextension, what remains is authentic. Authentic connections survive clarity. Performative ones do not. This realization removes fear. You no longer feel compelled to maintain every bond at any cost. You understand that relationships built on your compliance cannot evolve into relationships built on mutual respect without discomfort. And discomfort is not the enemy. It is information. If someone reacts strongly to your boundaries, the reaction tells you more than politeness ever could. It reveals where expectation exceeded agreement, where entitlement replaced appreciation, where habit replaced intention. Instead of arguing, you observe. Instead of defending, you maintain. Instead of explaining further, you allow silence to complete the message. Over time, you may notice that you feel less drained after interactions. Conversations end without residue. Decisions feel cleaner. You are not carrying unspoken resentment because you are no longer swallowing small violations. You have reduced friction by reducing self-betrayal. Self-betrayal is exhausting. It accumulates in small moments: the extra yes, the unnecessary apology, the nervous laugh, the extended justification. Each one feels minor. Together, they create imbalance. When those moments disappear, your energy reorganizes. You feel steady, not superior, not aggressive, not detached, steady. And steadiness commands a different kind of respect. Not the respect born of fear, the respect born of clarity. People know where they stand with you. They may not always like it, but they understand it. That understanding simplifies everything. You are no longer performing politeness to secure approval. You are practicing precision to maintain integrity. Integrity does not require loud defense. It requires consistency. When your words and boundaries align, your presence changes. There is less emotional noise around you. Fewer attempts to push limits. Fewer careless remarks. Fewer rushed demands. Because you no longer reward them. This is the final lesson. Politeness has value, but only when it is chosen, not automatic. Only when it reflects generosity, not fear. Only when it does not contradict self-respect. When you reach this point, you stop asking whether you are being too firm. You start asking whether you are being honest. And honesty, delivered calmly, is stronger than politeness delivered anxiously. You are still composed, still thoughtful, still measured, but no longer self-erasing. That is the transformation. Not becoming ruthless, becoming aligned. And alignment is power. You don't need to become harsh. You don't need to become distant. Just stop being polite where it costs you clarity. Notice where you over-explain. Notice where you apologize for decisions that protect your time. Notice where you laugh to keep peace. Start there. Quiet power isn't loud. It doesn't argue. It doesn't announce boundaries. It simply stops negotiating them. If this shifted something in you, don't rush to comment. Sit with it. And when you're ready, tell me which of the 9 situations you recognized yourself in. Clarity begins there.